Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down the big stuff. And today, we're diving into a question that is really shaping the future of entire countries. How do you build a cohesive society when people are moving all over the globe? It's a huge challenge, and it's forcing some incredibly tough choices between two totally different paths. So, how do you welcome new neighbors? On the surface, it sounds pretty simple, right? But for an entire country, that question is one of the most complicated, most difficult challenges they'll ever face. The answer reveals pretty much everything about their values, their fears, and what they think their future should look like. For a long time, the go-to idea in Europe was this kind of hands-off, tolerant multiculturalism. But, well, that's changing. That model is fading out, and it's forcing a really tough choice between two totally different ideas: integration and assimilation. So let's break down the first one. All right, let's kick things off in France. They have a very, very clear philosophy, and it's a demanding one. The goal there is for everybody, no matter where they're from, to become just French. Okay, so the whole French model, it's built on this one huge idea, laïcité. You'll hear that word a lot. It basically means strict secularism. The idea is that when you're in public, at school, in a government building, you are a French citizen first, period. Everything else, your religion, your background, that comes second. And get this isn't just about, learning the language or finding a job. No, it's way deeper. It's a demand that you adopt one single national identity when you're out in public. What you do at home is your business, but your public self, that belongs to the Republic. And this isn't just a philosophy anymore. We're seeing it get tougher and tougher, written right into the law. The requirements for immigrants are getting stricter. You literally have to sign a contract promising to respect Republican principles. And they're expanding those bans on religious symbols in schools, like the one we just saw with the abaya. But as you can imagine, this whole approach is super controversial. Critics are saying that instead of creating unity, it's actually doing the opposite. It's creating this deep sense of exclusion, of being alienated, especially for Muslim communities. They argue it's forcing people into an impossible choice: your faith or your country. And that tension, it's just pouring fuel on the fire of political polarization. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Now let's take a trip over to Norway and look at a completely different playbook. The focus here is not on changing your culture, but on something way more practical. Yeah, the philosophy in Norway is sometimes called meddling to help self-reliance. And it's a great phrase. It's kind of paternalistic, sure. The state is getting involved, but the goal is super specific. Give immigrants the tools they need to stand on their own 2 feet economically. It's not about changing who you are inside, it's about making sure you can get a job and participate. So how do they do it? The heart of their system is this thing called the Introduction Program, and it's mandatory. Newcomers have to take language classes, social studies classes, but here's the deal. While you're in the program, the state actually gives you financial support. And the real kicker? Finishing the program is your ticket to permanent residency and other big benefits. It's a very clear transaction. But, and this is a big but, this model isn't a perfect fix, not by a long shot. Experts are pointing to this really troubling thing they call the integration paradox. It's this deep, almost psychological truth that a good job doesn't automatically mean you feel like you belong. A paycheck isn't the same as feeling part of a community. So even with economic success, that feeling of isolation can stick around. And that can lead to some serious issues, like a rise in youth crime in the next generation, or women not participating in society. Okay, so let's just put these two models side by side for a second, because the difference is stark. On one hand, you have Norway. The main goal, economic self-sufficiency. The method, skills training. And your private culture, that's respected. Then you have France. The main goal, national and cultural uniformity. The method, legal restrictions that essentially erase religious identity from public life. We're talking about two totally different ideas of what it means to be a society. So what does all this mean for a country like Japan? It's on the verge of welcoming a lot more foreign workers. So what can it learn from these huge European experiments? At first glance, that Norwegian model seems pretty attractive, right? It's all about practical skills. So as Japan starts its new specified skilled worker system, you have to wonder, could they pull off something similar? A really hands-on, high-support approach? Well, hold on, because it's not that simple. Japan runs into 3 pretty massive barriers. First, there's the financial one. Let's be real, Norway's program is expensive and it's paid for by a high-welfare, high-tax state. Second, you have a systemic barrier. Japan's policies are still mostly designed for short-term labor, not for people putting down roots. And third, there's a huge cultural and political barrier. There's just a lot of pushback against big public spending on immigrants and that kind of meddling government intervention that's the core of the Norwegian model. So just copying Norway's model, probably not going to happen. But what about a hybrid? A Japan-style model? Instead of the government paying for everything, maybe it could offer tax breaks to companies that provide language training during work hours. And instead of building a bunch of physical classrooms, it could lean into digital tools, maybe make online courses a requirement for renewing a visa. It's a different way to get to a similar goal. Okay, but here is the single most important warning in all of this. Any system that sets conditions for who gets to belong, whether it's passing a language test or a culture quiz, it comes with a massive risk. The line between support and exclusion can get blurry really, really fast. A program that starts out trying to help people fit in can easily, almost accidentally, become a machine for kicking people out. And that leaves Japan, and really any country grappling with this, with a choice that's not just about immigrants, but about what kind of country it wants to be. Will it be a society that invests in practical support, that sees new people as a source of talent and energy? Or will it create a system of what you could call silent exclusion, risking division and stagnation? The answer to that question is going to define its future. It's the difference between growth and fracture.